Thank you for watching This Week in Fantasy. I am your host, Fidel Barraza, filling in for Alia Hassan. She'll be back next week. Joining me tonight, Abe, Terion, and Isaac. How's everyone doing?
Doing really good. How about you?
Great. We're a little bit more than half the way done with the NFL season, so let's get to it. Let's talk some fantasy football. All right, let's start off with your player of the week. I'll start off with Isaac.
My player of the week is the same player as last week. Dalvin Cook had another monster performance. He had 48.6 PPR points last week. He turned around and put up 39.2 this week. So he was just as dominant against an NFC North rival in the Detroit Lions. He carried the ball 22 times for 206 yards and 2 touchdowns. And not only did he get it done on the ground, he also caught 2 passes for 46 yards. So he's very versatile in that offense. He did it all again 2 weeks in a row now. And he did it in front of the guy that he replaced, a few years ago, in the future Hall of Famer, Adrian Peterson, on the other side. So that had to make him, feel good about doing that in front of him. And, the last 2 weeks combined, he's had a total of 369 rushing yards, 109 receiving yards, 6 total touchdowns, and 87.8 PPR fantasy points. You can't ask much more than that from anyone.
Yeah, no, you really can't. Abe.
Yeah, I'm going with Davante Adams. The Packers against 49ers game was easy as expected. We knew that the Packers were going to just steamroll them. There were way too many injuries that the 49ers had. We knew it was going to be a very easy contest. He had 33.3 points. I think Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams are proving that they're the best connection in the whole NFL in terms of quarterback and wide receiver, up there with DK Metcalf and Wilson. They're just very consistent. Every week, you're likely to get 20-plus points from Davante Adams. So he's a great player. Aaron Rodgers having an MVP kind of season, so I don't expect it to stop. And it'll probably continue until the rest of the season and into the playoffs.
Tarian.
Man, shout out to my boy Clayton real quick. He has a saying, the death taxes and Christian McCaffrey slang. I'm not going to completely steal his thunder today, but I have my own death taxes and the Seattle Seahawks defense sucking. They went from the Legion of Boom to the Legion of Doom. So I want to give a shout out to Josh. I want to give a shout out to Josh Allen, bro. Like, Josh Allen went 31 for 38, 417 yards and 3 touchdowns and 118 passer rating. It looked like, honestly, a Big 12 game, bro. Like, they wasn't lining the ball up at all, handing the ball off. They were throwing the ball each and every down, picking apart the Seattle defense. He had over 200 yards at halftime, passing yards. So my player of the week is Josh Allen. I think he had 38 fantasy points, which was insane.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yep. So that Josh Allen was my player of the week.
And he also provides the rushing value, which is really important. The rushing touchdown.
Right.
Yeah, no, he had a tremendous Sunday. All right, disappointment of the week. And there was a couple out there. Let's start out with Isaac.
I was very high on David Johnson going against the Jacksonville Jaguars this past week. And, he had 2 carries for 16 yards on that second drive for them. It looked like he was going to, have a good game. He was primed for a big fantasy day. And then he just went down with a concussion. So he ended up with like 1.5 PPR points, and that was it. Duke Johnson came in, filled his role nicely. He ended up with 15.3 PPR points. And then David's status for this week is uncertain right now as he's in the concussion protocol.
Abe.
Yeah, for me, I went with DJ Moore. He only had 2 catches for 18 yards, 3.8 points. Very disappointing. A couple of weeks before that, he had three straight weeks of at least 15 points, up to 25 points. So he was doing really well. We knew it would be like a decent defense against Tampa Bay, but Carlton Davis, we probably was going to be against Robbie Anderson. So we thought DJ Moore would be able to get more targets. Also, the nature of the game, just a lot of points, which it was. The Panthers were able to put up 31 points. So the fact that he wasn't able to get involved is disappointing. And I started him, but he only gave me 4 points. So I'm probably going to bench him moving forward. That's probably the way to do it. So very disappointing from DJ Moore.
All right, Tarian, I know that me and you were kind of thinking about, the same thing.
Let's
Go
have
ahead.
a conversation. Yep, let's have a group conversation because I didn't pick one player. I picked the team. I picked the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Right. You could just go down the line. You could talk about Tom Brady. He had 3 interceptions. You could talk about Leonard Fournette. You could talk about Mike Evans. But see, my question along if Ronald Jones, Abe was saying he only had 3 points. See, my question with them, it isn't are they a good team or are they a bad team, right? it's how are they used going forward? You know what I'm saying? Like I look at game flow with them and I question a lot of their game flow and I question a lot of their calls. Like today they interviewed the head coach, Arians, and Arians said Brady missed Mike Evans wide open a few times down the field. And it's like, why did you miss him wide open? Oh, because you're throwing the ball to Antonio Brown, who was in your game plan, like who you game plan for, right? So it's like, are they game planning for specific people per week? Or how does it work with them? I don't understand.
Well, I mean, I think what we've seen this season so far is when the Bucks are the most dynamic is whenever they get the play action run going, right? Play action pass. So it's either with Ronald Jones or it's with Leonard Fournette. But that's when you see the Bucks are the most dangerous on offense. Now we saw them the season low. I think it was some kind of record, right, for rushing yards in a game or attempts. So look, the Buccaneers, that offense can put some points up, but they got to get the ball rolling.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
To that point,
I was gonna say, right, the example that I gave earlier, right, when we talked about, you said play action run, which I agree with, right? Yeah. But week 2, right, for example, Leonard Fournette had 19 carries for 104 yards. He goes out, right? The next couple weeks, Ronald Jones was the guy. Then when he played the Raiders, I was, there covering that game, and Ronald Jones was in the game. It was all Leonard Fournette. And since Leonard Fournette's been out, Ronald Jones has been a skeleton in that offense. He hasn't been around. So it's like, are they going by name sake? Because Leonard Fournette's a bigger name than Ronald Jones, or are they going off of production? You know what I'm saying? Like I don't get it. So
it reminds me a lot of what the Rams are doing with their running backs. You never know which running back is gonna pop off. Like Malcolm Brown will be the guy one week, Cam Akers once in a while, and then Darrell Henderson. So that's like their problem. Tampa Bay just can't get like a rhythm going. Fournette's gonna get most of the touches one week, Jones the next, and it's just like if you do that, then you're not gonna be as productive. We're seeing the same things with Indianapolis right now too, with Jonathan Taylor and Jordan Wilkins.
Yeah.
So.
And to that point earlier, Fidel, the Buccaneers, one of their best outings against the Packers. They had 38 points. Packers' run defense was awful, so Ronald Jones had a big game. They got the play action going with Brady, and they put up 38 points in a huge blowout loss against the Packers.
And they got to get the ball more to Mike Evans. I mean,
they got a lot of receivers, but I mean,
they have a lot of receivers on that offense, and I get you got to get the ball to Gronk as well. But I think you got to get Mike Evans more involved in that offense. You have to put him inside a little bit more, play him in the slot.
Yeah,
big tall receiver.
He's a 6'5" target. So
yeah, exactly.
Huge guy.
All right, guys. So it looks like we have a question from Trey S. Sorry for the big list here. Full PPR. Choose 2: DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift, Melvin Gordon, Fournette, Landry, Judy, or Marvin Jones. Thanks, guys. I'll let Isaac answer first, and then we'll go from there.
Well, we already brought up DJ Moore. It looks like Curtis Samuel's kind of filling in more for him. So, like, DJ Moore's just been on this little cold streak. DeAndre Swift, he's getting most of the touches out of that backfield, so I would probably put him in. Melvin Gordon's kind of slipping right now. We just talked about Fournette and the Tampa running backs. Jarvis Landry would probably be my other one, maybe even Jerry Jeudy, but Landry – Austin Hooper's battling injuries at that tight end position. Njoku's not doing much. Odell's out for the season. So Landry would probably be like the safe bet. Judy's coming off a good week. Marvin Jones is as well. But if I had to pick 2, I'd probably pick DeAndre Swift and Jarvis Landry.
Tarian or Abe?
Go ahead, Abe. You can do it.
Yeah, I'll go Swift and Fournette. I think that Swift has been really consistent. And there's a lot of opportunity there. Kerryon Johnson hasn't been much of a threat in the Lions' backfield. We know for a while they were trying to get the ball rolling and actually running the ball as an organization. Now that they actually have a running back that can consistently do that, they've stuck to it. He's been really consistent. And I would go with Fournette as the other guy. I mean, I think the Bucs offense is very talented. Any week they're going to go out and have a big showing. The only concern might be there's just too many guys, but I would probably go with Fournette and Swift.
I think for me, I would go Swift and Judy. And for me, it's just going off the schedule right now. Like Judy's going to be playing against a banged up Raiders secondary this week. I know that kid Isaiah Johnson had a big game, but if he starts, I feel like Judy, there could be some points had because Keenan Allen did his thing, against the Raiders secondary, and they are prone to big plays every now and again. So if you have to start him this week, I would say Judy, just based off, like I said, the play and the fact that the Raiders maybe went out their number 1 cornerback this week. And DeAndre Swift, he's coming off of he does multiple things. He can run the ball, and he's a dual threat out of the backfield. He can catch balls out of the backfield as well. So I like Swift, and like I said, schedule. So I will look at a lot of those matchups to see who these guys are going up against. So like I said earlier, like if you see a Seattle Seahawks matchup or a bad defensive matchup, I would go to bad matchup. That's just the easiest thing to say. Bad matchups. And I forget who the Lions have this weekend, but I think it's one of the it's a pretty premier matchup. That and opportunities can be had. So I would say Swift and Judy.
All right.
So the consensus is DeAndre Swift. So Fidel, if you had to pick one of the three options here, just to give like a final answer, who would you pick?
Man, I would have to agree with Terrion Judy,
Okay.
Jerry Judy, just because of the matchup he's going to be up against on Sunday against a banged up Raiders secondary, and we know the Raiders defense gives up some points, so that's what I would go with. And then of course DeAndre Swift. He started off slow in the beginning of the season, but I actually have him on my team, and he's been producing a lot, so that's who I would go with. Nathan Murphy, Wonder will point out he's a great job, guys. Keep up the hard work. And of course, if anybody else has any questions or comments, make sure you leave them on here, and we'll read them on the air. Let's see. We got Kendall. Tarian, put some respect on Jacoby Myers' name. You heard it. You heard it, man. Got to put some respect on there.
Hey, tell Belichick to do that. That's his job. That's not mine.
Yeah, great point. Real quick, Trey S. got the consistency on Swift. I'll toss a four-headed quarter for the other. Haha. Thanks for the input, gents. Hey, no problem, Trey. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. All right, waiver wire pickups. Who should we pick up on the waiver wire? Start with Isaac.
The guy that I've been like highest on this week is Curtis Samuel. Abe was talking about how DJ Moore has been, struggling lately, and that's because Curtis Samuel came back from an injury, and he kind of stole his thunder. In the last 3 weeks, he's produced 65.5 total points. He's averaged the 7th most fantasy points at the wide receiver position in that time. And he's caught 19 passes in that stretch for 184 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he's also rushed for 41 yards. So a wide receiver that's also getting involved in the running game. And he was only rostered in 31% of Yahoo leagues before this morning's deadline. So if you got him, you got a gem, because this guy's been on a roll lately.
Abe.
Yeah, I'm going with Christian Kirk. He's rostered in 64% of leagues, so he's still available in about a third of leagues, which is still pretty good. The last 3 weeks, he's had 23, 20, and 22. So he's had a lot of production quietly, I would say. Against the Bills, Tre'Davious White is probably going to go against DeAndre Hopkins, so he's probably going to get a more favorable matchup in the game. And I think it's going to be a big game. It's going to be probably a shootout. There's going to be a lot of points. Josh Allen, Kyler Murray. Just going to be a primetime showdown. I think it's probably going to be close to the game of the week. So I expect a lot of points, and I think that bodes well, especially for Christian Kirk.
Tarian.
What's crazy, Abe? I forgot that Christian Kirk and Kyler Murray played together at Texas A&M. So, I completely so it's like they have instant chemistry, right? I forgot, bro. And they were recruited together. It's crazy. But for me, I'm going to say Allen Lazard. He's been out the last month or so with a core muscle injury. And before he went out, he was averaging 19 and a half yards per attempt. And he was coming off 2 straight games with touchdowns. Then he got hurt. But Aaron Rodgers and that Packers offense, they've been really rolling. Abe mentioned earlier the Tampa Bay game, but since that Tampa Bay game, they've been coming out and they just been blasting fools, right? And now, Aaron Rodgers, he gets his big 6'4" target back, a big red zone target. And like I said earlier, look at their schedule. They got the Jaguars coming up, the Lions coming up, the Titans coming up. They have some really bad defenses coming up on their schedule, and this year the Packers been feasting on bad defenses, so Allen Lazard is going to be a big part of that if, he's healthy. So I will look at Allen Lazard.
Well, let's talk about some quarterbacks real quick. So obviously we saw Tua Tagovailoa have a pretty complete game on Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals. The other name, Justin Herbert. I mean, I know some people already picked him up, but I saw in some links he's still available. I mean, should people put a claim in for those quarterbacks?
Oh, definitely. And this week, there are some big names at the quarterback position that have buys. So like Patrick Mahomes, Matt Ryan's another name. So these rookies, it's a year for those rookie quarterbacks right now. Tua's coming off of like a 21.5 point game. Herbert's been consistently in the mid-20s since he's taken over. And Joe Burrow, he's battling Herbert for rookie of the year right now. So, any three of those quarterbacks, I'd feel confident having on my team. I would look at the matchup week by week to see if I would actually put them in my lineup. And I think that Tua has the better matchup going against that LA Chargers defense that just can't seem to win a game these days. But Herbert, like I said, very consistent. So I'd feel confident in both of them for this week.
Let's see, you're on mute, Abe.
Yeah, I'm
There,
Herbert.
there you are.
I put him in the lineup every week in one league. I think he's a great quarterback, 20-plus points every single week. I would probably go with Herbert over Tua. I think he's definitely the best option. He's been consistently just putting up points and just been really good.
I don't want to sound like a homer, but I feel like people keep disrespecting Derek Carr. Like, I look at the Raiders schedule, bro, and I look at the Raiders schedule literally, right? And they're playing defenses that aren't good.
Yeah.
They've been scoring over 20 points each and every week. Coming up, they have this week. They have the Broncos. You see what he did against the Chiefs. They have the Jets coming up. They have another game against the Chargers. The Falcons. They have a bunch of games on there coming up that just aren't great. Great matches for him, and that he can take advantage of. He's quietly top 5 quarterback in the league right now. Quietly. Completion percentage is through the roof. He completes a 25-yard pass over 25 yards every game, right? And now he's running the football a little bit with his feet. I feel like people keep disrespecting him. And if you need a quarterback on bye week, that's the guy I'm looking at. I love the rookies and stuff like that, but I go with consistency. And Carr, to me, is so consistent that people just sleep on him, bro. Stop sleeping on Derek Carr.
Yeah, you need to put some respect on DC's name moving forward in the season. All right, so must start of the week. So, of course, it's important to have great fantasy football players, but it is also very important to look at matchups that they have during the week. So, we'll start out with Isaac. Who is your must start of the week?
My must start isn't the flashiest guy, but I got to go with the hot hand in Evan Ingram, the tight end for the New York Giants. He's facing the Philadelphia Eagles for the second time in the last 4 weeks. So this is kind of a revenge game. We all kind of remember how that last game turned out. He didn't fully extend on that last pass, and it kind of fell off his fingertips, and people put a lot of blame on him because if he hauls that in, the game's over. But the last 3 weeks, he's put up double-digit fantasy points every single week. Ever since that play, he has been on fire. And he's had 29 targets in the last 3 weeks, so he's getting plenty of opportunities out there. And like I said, I think he's going to come out with vengeance in this revenge game and prove that, the Giants deserve to win that last game. And I think New York's going to come out on top on this one.
Hey.
Yeah, to that point, I'm going with Travis Fulgham. He had 5 straight weeks of really consistent football, 13 points, 31, 19, 5, 12, and 20. So I think, with Carson Wentz as your quarterback, he's going to have that upside, more of an upside than other guys would, more of a boost than other guys would. I think he's been really consistent, so you can always count on that. The volume's there. There's not that many bona fide receivers with the Eagles. There's also a lot of open targets with Zach Ertz and Goddard being injured. So I think it's a good opportunity. Miles Sanders is coming back. So that might take away a bit of touches, but it's also going to make the offense way better. So it can give everyone more chances, less punting, that kind of thing, more touchdown chances. So, yeah.
Well, remember, though, that Rieger's back, and then Alshon was actually a full participant today. So just keep that in mind, too.
Tarian.
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned earlier the Legion of Doom, right? So I kind of look and see who they're playing this week, and it's the Rams. And the Rams are a team that's coming off a bye week. And you have to think that McVay is salivating at the mouth, seeing how effective Buffalo's passing game was. So I'm looking at a number of Rams players, like Jared Goff is a guy I would look at. We talked about quarterbacks earlier. I'm looking at Cooper Kupp, looking at Robert Woods. I'm looking at Tyler Higbee for those who haven't found a tight end yet. I'm even looking at Everett. I think he could have a big game too. The Seattle Seahawks, they're on pace to have one of the worst defenses of all time. And that's not a joke. It's true, and with a guy like McVay coming off a bye week and seeing how effective the Bills were being able to spread it out and pass it, I think that he's salivating and he's creating plays as we're talking, to exploit those bad corners on Seattle. So I will look at a multitude of Rams players. If you guys see them and they're open, take a shot at them.
Yeah. Maybe this is the game that the Rams get back on track on offense. All right. Sit of the week. Who do we have to sit this week? Isaac.
Consistently, the New Orleans Saints shut down the run game. Every team they play, it seems like they just always dominate. That D-line is just – they're underrated, they're ferocious, and they're on a 51 straight game streak right now of not allowing a 100-yard rusher. That is insane. 51 games. So Jerick McKinnon, he had that decent game for the San Francisco 49ers against Green Bay on that Thursday night matchup last week. Him and Richie James were like the only two that really did anything on that offense as they got blown out. A lot of people were high on Hasty in that game, but McKinnon came out. He actually scored. He got like 16 touches, but I'm staying away from him this week. I don't really trust anyone on that San Francisco offense right now, all those injuries and even on that defense too. So I'm just staying away from Jerick McKinnon and JaMychal Hasty this week.
Abe.
Yeah, I'm going with Marquise Brown. I think he's very inconsistent. He's going against Bill Belichick and the Patriots. I think there's no way that he's going to let them have big plays, particularly with Marquise Brown's speed. I think Belichick's going to circle that. He's going to say, we can't let this guy beat us deep, and he's not going to be able to change the game on us. We're going to keep it within, no big plays, nothing like that. So I think he's also just too inconsistent, and I think Belichick's going to be too smart. Even with all the guys that left the defense, I think it's going to be too much. The passing offense is not good enough for me to trust him, so I would definitely take him out of the lineup.
Torian.
So we talked earlier about some of the rookie quarterbacks, and Joe Burrow was one of those names. I love Joe Burrow, don't get me wrong, but I'm not sure how I feel about his matchup this weekend against the Steelers. The Steelers' defense this year have been up and down, but they are still one of the better defenses, and they're very turnover prone. And this is his first road game, against the Steelers. And the weather is slated to be pretty cold, so I don't know really what he's going to do, against that defense. And Micah Fitzpatrick, as we've seen the last couple of weeks, has been a ball hawk, and he could throw a few interceptions, or have a fumble, So you just never know. I'm not saying that he can't have a big game, but I would just be very cautious, if I were to pick up Joe Burrow and start him in a week where there's, as Isaac said, Patrick Mahomes and some of these quarterbacks are on bye week. So he would be a guy I would kind of, and there's easier matchups, out there. So, yeah.
All right. Let me ask you guys something. Who would you guys, or what would you guys say is a bold prediction for this weekend in fantasy? Maybe a player that we're not expecting to have a big game that scores the most points, or maybe somebody that just, has a dud of a game like we saw Tom Brady have it last week.
Like I said before, my best performer the last 2 weeks has been Dalvin Cook. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a Bears fan, but it doesn't seem like, running backs get a ton of points against that defense. So I wouldn't be too high on him, scoring a lot of points. I would still have him in your lineup, but I think there's going to be a lot of disappointment this week in Dalvin Cook's production. I think that it's going to be more of like Kirk Cousins trying to pass. And when that team, relies on Cousins more than Cook, it's just not good results. And for some reason, the Bears always play the Vikings well, even with terrible years. This year they started out okay, winning a lot of games at the end, but the last 3 weeks they have looked horrible. But their defense is still playing really well, and I don't think a lot of people think about that.
Hey,
yeah, I think Kenny Golladay coming back, be a little careful maybe. I just think against the number one Redskins defense might be a little shaky, but I think Marvin Jones is also a very capable receiver too, so he might be able to pick up the slack. But I would just say still put him in there. He's probably a receiver too, but I wouldn't be surprised if he had, let's say, 10 points when he usually averages about 17.
Torian. Hawkinson's been on a roll. Sorry about that, but
Yeah, that's
Hawkinson's been on a roll too. So like they don't really like need Kenny Galladay to like rush it back. You know, Hawkinson's playing good. Danny Amendola led the team in targets this past week. So that's a good point, Abe.
DeAndre Swift, as we talked about, very consistent, 15 points a week, a lot of production. Finally, they have a running game, so it's not going to be on the passing game.
And then also let's keep in mind that Matthew Stafford was out pretty much the whole week, and he just rolled out of bed when he played against the Vikings. So I think that's important to note as well. Tarian.
Okay, I kind of talked about the Bucks a little bit earlier, but you keep on force feeding Antonio Brown the ball, he's gonna eventually end up scoring a touchdown. And I think this is the week that he's gonna end up finding his way in the end zone. Just for the simple fact they play the Carolina Panthers defense that is a very shoddy secondary, and points can be had on the deep ball with them. And I feel like they're gonna keep trying to get Antonio Brown the ball to make him feel comfortable. And he's going to find his way into the end zone, Antonio Brown. And another matchup, too, that I kind of interested in, and I don't know necessarily if I would pick him up off the waiver wire, but he had a big game last week against for the Chargers, not with Kalen Ballage. And Ballage, he's going back home, playing his former team against the Dolphins this weekend. And he's going to be the primary ball carrier this weekend. So I feel like he might find his way in the end zone like he did a week ago. And if he scores, this week, I think a team in the Chargers that are looking for a short yardage back, even when Austin Eckler comes back, if Kalen Ballage continues to show himself and have big performances, he might, take that short yardage back job, So that's the guy I have my eye on picking up. He has to have another good week for me to completely be all in on him. So, yeah.
All right. And that's going to go and wrap up this week in fantasy for week 10. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Also, this show is presented to you by Grand Lighthouse Coffee. Make sure you go to grandlighthouse.coffee.com. Use the promo code EastWest to get 10% off your purchase. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. Have a great night.